Previously on Crime Adjacent. In the parking lot of the Palmer headquarters that night, I didn't know about Adalberto Diaz or the Buttons or Michael Palmer. I was with Winnie Freeman, the reporter. We had just discovered City Councilwoman Bea Macy, who had been left for dead here at the Palmer headquarters, and we were staring at what could only be described as a blood trail. It was everywhere. Even in the eerie yellow glow of the parking lot, I could see drops and smears of blood leading from Bea Macy through the edges of the parking lot and all the way past the collection of flags at the front entrance to the glass front door of the Palmer headquarters. There was even a smear of blood on the door handle. Is that what happens when you stomp someone to death? I imagine so. Just blood everywhere, all over. But something felt off. It just didn't feel right, and I didn't know why, like a thought was slipping uncatchable through a fog of inputs. Gary Pugh was killed on the Palmer property. Margie Miller was dumped at the Palmer house. And now Bea Macy, dumped in the parking lot of the Palmer headquarters, with a trail of blood leading directly to one of the original suspects in this case. The man who had supposedly eluded capture for 30 years and managed to remain anonymous and uncaught, but now there's a trail of blood leading directly to him, flashing lights pointing in his direction. Like I said, maybe this is just what happens when you stomp someone to death. Maybe I should have been happy. Finally, at long last, the killer had been caught quite literally red-handed. Finally, after so many years, we knew who the rest stop killer was. In fact, at that moment, I could see him. Right then, in the window, Daniel Palmer was standing in his office on the 4th floor, staring out over Ridgewood and the scene of his latest crime. So why? Why did I feel like something just didn't fit? And why was I thinking of dogs? It was confounding. I couldn't figure it out or shake it. But in this dire moment when Bea was bleeding and the cops were coming and the rest stop killer was quite possibly cleaning up at that very moment, here I was, thinking of Susan and Nikki and Murder, She Wrote, and dogs. I quite literally shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. I needed answers. I needed to see for myself. So while Winnie waited with Bea for the cops, and as the Palmers, both senior and junior, gathered above us on the 4th floor, and as Chief Williams led an entourage of officers our way, I did the only thing I could think of in the moment. I broke the front glass door and raced to the stairwell. Here's the story. But first, as this season of the show wraps up with next week's episode, I wanted to make a quick reminder. Hop on over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/crimeadjacent, where we have free weekly live video streams for members and fans of the show. This is our place, a place to just hang out and chat each week. Plus, I've got information up about our first true crime college reading and live event that will take place on December 3rd. Check it out at patreon.com/crimeadjacent for more. I can't wait to see you there. From San Francisco, this is Crime Adjacent, the never-ending true crime story told weekly. I'm Chase Patrick. Susan found me sleeping under her car. Have I told you that? Have I told you this story? This is a detour, a little bit, but it gives you a little insight into my love affair with small clues, those tiny, almost unrecognizable, discordant bits of information or small moments that seem strange or out of place, but often just make everything click. Because that happens here. So you may recall, and I've said this for sure on other episodes, that after my parents kicked me out at age 12, I survived on the streets of San Francisco for a number of years, and sleeping under cars was the best trick I ever picked up. On sidewalks or in alleys or in parks, you're exposed, vulnerable. I've been robbed, beaten, worse. Sleeping in doorways or garage underhangs was no better. Sometimes he'd wake up to coffee or food, sometimes abuse. One time, a man offered me a shower and a clean set of clothes only to lock me inside for 3 days. Lesson learned. One time, a lady threw a bucket of hot water on me. But sleeping under cars? Now that was the stuff. No one ever suspected it. No one ever looked under cars. I could drift off in peace and comfort and just doze for hours. Until, of course, footsteps approached or engines turned over. That happened with Susan. It was in that special fog rain moment of early September when the freeze of a San Francisco summer was just beginning to feel the inklings of fall, which, in San Francisco, actually meant summer. It was still cold and wet and foggy, but under an elegant 1970s mint green Cadillac, I was in heaven. Warm, comfortable, safe. My eyes popped open at the sound of footsteps. That was my cue. I usually waited for the driver to open the door and get in, and then I simply rolled out from under the passenger side and disappeared down the sidewalk like a ghost. I had perfected this. But Susan, she stopped at the driver's side door. She rattled her keys, and they dropped to the wet street. I saw large muscular legs and her large muscular arms coming into view. And then I saw her knee hit the ground, and then a palm pressing into the wet, gritty street. I heard a humph and a grunt, and then her face, peeking under the car. It was so kind and curious, I remember that. Red hair, green eyes, glasses, creases at the side of her eyes from smiling so damn much. I'll always remember that. That's the Susan I would come to know, like happiness had been carved into her features from so much laughter. But in that moment, that first meeting, when we first met, I froze. She said, "You good?" I blinked. "Listen," she said, "I have to go to work, but see that house?" She pointed to an elegant Victorian with a pointed turret. She said, "That's mine. I'll be home at around 6 or so. Stop by for dinner anytime, okay? And you're welcome to sleep under the car anytime you want. No problem. But there's a bed inside, and you're always welcome, okay?" I blinked again. I didn't know what to say. She looked kind and sweet and had soft eyes, and I had clocked her the moment I saw her legs and then her face. A meal? Dinner? I had heard this before. I remained silent, as if caught in a fight or flight moment, and I decided instead to freeze. I think, to be honest, I was curious. Susan checked her watch. "Listen, I have to go now, but I know what you're thinking. And I only want you to know that we have to stick together, people like us. That's it. That's the kicker. I'm starting the car now, okay?" She groaned and pushed off the street. She opened the door and got in. I could feel her massive frame rattle the car. She waited a solid 10 seconds to start the engine. By then, I had already rolled out from under the passenger side and gave one last look at the yellow Victorian by the library as I made my way down the sidewalk into the fog-wet early morning. That's how we met, Susan and me. I made my way back to the Victorian, watching from the shadows for a few days before actually knocking. One dinner eventually turned into a warm bed, one warm shower. One night turned into another, and then a week and a month, and school, and then one day, another knock at the door. On the porch, there was a young black girl with a worn backpack and a wet coat. She was about my age, shivering in the rain, skinny, eyes wide, darting, one of them purple and yellow. It was Nikki Freeman. Susan had made the same offer, said the same thing, said that people like us, we had to stick together, watch out for each other. Nikki spent one night and quietly asked me, a full-time resident by that point, what was the catch, what Susan wanted. I smiled wide. I knew this was coming. I had the same thought myself. I told Nikki this. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nikki didn't buy it, just like I didn't at first. I pointed out all the old photos on Susan's hallway, all the street kids who had been rescued by Susan, who were given a home and a new lease on life before, I suppose, moving on to jobs or college. Every now and then, one of them returned to say hi, to catch up with Susan. All of this must have been enough for Nikki, because just like me, one night turned into another, and another, then a week and a month and a year. Over the next few short, sweet years, we became a makeshift family. There were some rules we had to follow, like going back to school. Nikki excelled. I did okay. We also had to promise to let Susan know if we were gone for a night or gone for good. We had some house chores to do, which basically amounted to cleaning up after ourselves, no big deal. But mostly, and this was inviolate, there was one rule Susan held dear, and she got so mad whenever we broke it, which we did every single week, relentlessly. Every Sunday evening, Susan corralled us into the living room in front of her old RCA and forced us to watch Murder, She Wrote, her favorite show. But we had to be quiet, and above all, we could not spoil it for her by revealing the killer before Susan could figure it out. Honestly, these remain the best nights of our lives. Either Nikki or I would put the clues together and shout it out well before Susan could, and my God, she would get so grumpy. She'd hold a grudge for the rest of the night, but in her way, which meant nudging us with her elbow and smirking at the same time, like she was mad, but I think also deep down, proud of our wits. We loved that woman. We felt so safe with her. I think she saved our lives, and I know what happened to her put us on the path we're on today. With you, doing this.
If your eyes are the windows to your soul, and your glasses are the windows to your eyes, then it's pretty important to find your perfect frames. That's why at Warby Parker, we've made shopping for eyewear as easy and fun as can be. Peruse endless styles in our stores, or use our app to virtually try on frames and get personalized recommendations. To find your next favorite pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to locate your nearest Warby Parker store, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
There's something wildly strange about memory, about loose thoughts floating through the foggy ether of the brain's nether regions. Some float away, unnoticed, but every once in a while, one stray thought builds and circles around, slamming into the present moment. I had just used a rock to smash through the front door of the Palmer headquarters when the thoughts of dogs kept slamming into the present moment. I could hear sirens. Police lights had just begun to bounce around the lobby, and I was racing for the stairwell to go confront Daniel Palmer, to catch him literally red-handed, covered in blood maybe, when the random thought of dogs in these Sunday nights with Susan and Nikki and Murder, She Wrote slammed into my brain and stopped me in my tracks. I thought, what would Jessica Fletcher do? And then, there it was. Teddy. Why was I thinking of Teddy? Of all the episodes and all the moments, why had this tiny beagle popped into my head? The episode I was thinking of was probably one of our all-time favorites. It was just absolutely ridiculous on so many levels. We loved it, all of us. It was about a dog named Teddy in a ridiculous murder plot in Virginia horse country. Did someone actually train a dog to press a gate button at the right signal, and did someone enter that gate at just the right time only to get squished to death? Absurd, right? We talked for hours about this episode. Was Teddy, the dog, malicious? A murderer? Did someone put him up to it? After the show, I remember Susan traced this tiny clue back to Agatha Christie and another dog in a dog ball left at the top of the stairs for someone to trip over and fall to her death. Just like Jessica Fletcher, Christie's Hercule Poirot saw through the ruse immediately. Susan, ever the sociologist, explained that yes, Murder, She Wrote probably stole the idea from Agatha Christie, who, in turn, you may know where this is going by now, cribbed the idea from none other than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and his Sherlock Holmes. You've probably heard the phrase, the dog that didn't bark. That's the turning point of The Adventures of Silver Blaze, another horse country tale. Without giving anything away, Sherlock Holmes put it together that the dog in this story didn't bark at the intruder, which means the dog knew the intruder. Case closed. This curious incident of the dog in the night became a telltale sign of clues that didn't happen, like the dog that didn't bark, and what that must mean. I was on the 4th floor of the Palmer headquarters by now, racing up the stairwell, almost to the main Palmer office. There were shouts below. Clearly the police had arrived. I didn't have much time. So why was I fixated on these memories? Susan, Murder, She Wrote, Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes, Teddy, the dog that didn't bark. All these stories turning on the thinnest bits of evidence. Was that it? Was that what was bugging me about this case? The blood trail. It led directly to Daniel Palmer. It was like a neat bow had tied up this case. But was it too neat? Was that it? What would Jessica Fletcher think of all this? I shook my head again, trying to shove the memories away. Not now. There was no time. The cops were rushing up the stairs. I was at the door. I couldn't have known this, but I tested the door handle just like Adalberto Diaz was probably doing at that very moment over at the Palmer house, over at Michael Palmer's bedroom. I didn't know about their fight. I didn't know about the buttons. As far as I knew, in that moment, this was it. The final confrontation with the rest stop killer himself, just waiting behind the door in what I imagined was a sea of blood and panic. I pushed through the office door and saw Daniel and his father, Daniel Sr., in his wheelchair by the window. They turned, shocked. I could see it on their faces. Daniel Palmer spoke first. "What are you doing here? Where's Cheryl? What's the meaning of this?" I scanned the room. No blood anywhere. If one of these men had just kidnapped and stomped Bea Macy half to death just minutes prior, their shoes would still be covered in blood, their hands, their clothes. But they were so pressed, so put together, both of them. Both wore dark navy suits as if dressed up for a late-night meeting. And there it was, squarely on Daniel Palmer Jr.'s lapel. The flag pin. Or one of them, I guess. I saw a collection of them in a glass shadow box on a bookshelf. Maybe he simply grabbed another one after accidentally leaving his behind at the crime scene over at Bea Macy's gym. Maybe. It's possible. But I had seen everything I needed to see. The absence of blood, the absence of recognition, the absence of clues. Neither man had any idea what was going on. That much was apparent. All those loose thoughts floating through the ether of my brain had coalesced into an urgent, beating message. What had been bothering me became apparent. These men, both of them, either of them, were not the killer. So who, then? Was it really Michael Palmer all along? How was that possible, given he was a toddler back in the 1990s? None of this made sense. My head swirled with possibilities and confusion. If not Daniel Palmer Jr., then who? My time had run out. Chief Williams burst into the room, huffing, gun drawn. Detective Jones followed. They had a phalanx of cops with them. They sprinted into the room in a hurry, ready for a fight. And then, they stopped. Surprise coming into their faces. The Palmers were still at the window. I was at the bookshelf examining the lapel pin case. The cops were at the door, seemingly unsure what to do. I imagine Williams and Jones had expected to see an office filled with blood and panic as well. It was all rather anticlimactic, to be honest. There was a stunned, surprised silence, sort of hanging in the air. Daniel Palmer Sr. broke it first. He slammed a fist into his wheelchair. "What in the Lord's name is happening here? Where's Cheryl? And who the hell are you?" He pointed a finger at me. The awkward spell had been broken. Chief Williams put his gun away. He approached Daniel Palmer Jr. slowly. Williams took out his cuffs. "Daniel Palmer," he said, "you're under arrest." Daniel Palmer Sr. rose shakily from his wheelchair and tried to intervene, shouting at the chief and the other cops and even me. I shared a look with Detective Jones. It was a small moment, but we had clearly been thinking the same thing. Daniel Palmer Jr., he looked confused. Genuinely confused. Shocked, really, like he had no idea what had just happened or why he was under arrest. Chief Williams had cuffed him and read him his rights and told him he was under the arrest not just for the kidnapping and attempted murder of Bea Macy, who had already been loaded into an ambulance and whisked away to the hospital with Winnie, but for all of the rest stop killer murders. Daniel Palmer Jr. had nearly crumpled into his desk chair, stunned and confused, while Chief Williams had placed him under the guard of a younger officer. Was this really the look of a captured serial killer? And where was the blood? Judging by the trail, it should have been everywhere. I could tell from her face that Detective Jones was thinking the same thing. I wondered if she too had watched Murder, She Wrote back in the day. Probably. With the room more or less under control now, Daniel Palmer Sr. was still demanding answers and had forcibly taken the flagpin case from my hands. Chief Williams held up his own hands as if fed up with all the noise and nonsense. The room fell silent. Williams barked, "This is now a crime scene. Everyone out." He turned to me and pointed toward the door. "I don't even know what the hell you're doing here, but Detective Jones, get him out, now." Williams then turned his attention to Daniel Palmer Sr. This was awkward. The Palmers were town royalty, benefactors of the entire city. But Williams had just placed one of them under arrest for being a notorious serial killer who had murdered too many and torn the town apart for decades, and now had the duty of placating the eldest Palmer. Williams spoke softly and firmly. "Mr. Palmer, I need that." Williams held out his hands for the flagpin case. Daniel Palmer Sr. gripped it harder, holding it to his chest. He said, "You need a warrant. This is our office. Get out." For his part, Daniel Palmer Jr. was still handcuffed and quiet, as if in a stupor near his desk. Everything that happened next happened so fast. Detective Jones motioned for me to follow her to the door, shrugging, like, sorry. Daniel Palmer Jr. stared blankly ahead. Chief Williams gripped the flagpin case and tried to gently wrestle it from Daniel Palmer Sr., who shook and raged in his wheelchair. And then it happened. The glass pin case. It fell. It crashed onto the tile floor and burst open. Pins scattered across the floor, skittering into the corners and tinkling against shoes and baseboards. There were so many, I remember thinking. How is that possible? The case only held 20 flag pins, tops. And yet, dozens of them had erupted out of the shattering case. Scores, hundreds, I don't know. There were so many. They bounced and clattered and practically flooded the room. I looked at Chief Williams. He wasn't confused at all. His face was a mask of sheer horror. He whispered, "All these years." He reached down and pinched a flag pin. "All these men." I looked at the pin pinched between his fingers and finally understood. It wasn't a flag pin. It was a button. All of them were. Some silver, some brass, some gold. Some were coated in dried blood. Some had stray bits of frayed blue denim thread. Levi's, Jordache, Lee, Gap, Benetton. There were too many to count. Williams and Jones looked as if they wanted to vomit. Each button, all the scores and dozens of them, represented a man taken and beaten and stomped to death by the rest stop killer. Williams and Jones had thought 3 men were killed in the 1990s, Tommy and the 2 Bobbies, and then 3 more in 2023 when the killer had reemerged. But the buttons told a different story altogether. The rest stop killer had never stopped. He never simply vanished. He prowled community after community for years, unleashing his form of brutal terror in town after town and on family after family. There were just so many buttons, which meant so many men. Williams turned to Daniel Palmer Jr., still handcuffed and seated at the desk. Williams, a tear coming from his eye and rage building on his features, stammered, "How could you?" And then, there it was, the look, the tiniest of moments. Daniel Palmer Jr. returned Chief Williams' stare with a look of sheer, absolute, unquestionable confusion. The man had no idea what the buttons meant, or why they were there, or why Chief Williams looked as if he wanted to take his gun out and shoot the man right then and there in the office. Daniel Palmer Jr. had absolutely no idea what the hell was going on. Daniel Palmer Sr. reached down and picked up the flag case, turning it over in his hands as if to examine it. He, too, had no idea what had just happened, what all those buttons meant. It was evident there was no hiding it. He was just as confused as his son. Chief Williams tried to snatch the case from his hands. He said, "You're both under arrest until we can figure it out, until we can figure out which one of you is responsible." Senior was now also at a loss for words, just like his son. He stood there, just inches from Williams, his eyes wide in shock. And in that silent, stunned moment, it happened. A stray strand of frazzled hair floated in the still air between Williams and Daniel Palmer Sr. It caught a drifting vortex of air, twirled once, and then gently floated to the ground. Daniel Palmer sneezed. That was it. Teddy, the dog. That's what was off. That was the stray thought I was trying to catch from the very moment I noticed the blood trail leading so neatly to Daniel Palmer's personal office. Murder, she wrote, and Jessica Fletcher, and Teddy, and Sherlock Holmes, and the dog that didn't bark. It all came together in that moment. Daniel Palmer Jr. was not the killer, nor was his father, nor was Michael, none of them. But I knew in that moment exactly who was. Next time, on Crime Adjacent, I had to find Winnie right away. That night, as I had run to the Palmer headquarters, Winnie stayed behind in the parking lot, promising to stay by Bea Macy's side. I assumed that as Chief Williams was arresting Daniel Palmer, and as the buttons came tumbling out of his flag pin case, Winnie was at the hospital at that very moment, keeping her longtime friend company. In the Palmer office, after I saw the dog hair, I grabbed Chief Williams from behind, spinning him around. Not the wisest move, I suddenly thought. It looked as if he was about to arrest me too, or worse. But I couldn't help it. I blurted out, "Chief, do you have any officers guarding Margie or Bea Macy over at the hospital?" Chief Williams snapped, "Why?" "Because you need to call them now. Tell them the killer is there, right now, to finish the job." This season of Crime Adjacent wraps up with the next episode, but you can find the trailer for the next season on this podcast feed and on all of our socials like Patreon or Instagram. Remember, Crime Adjacent is the never-ending true crime story told weekly, and so there's no need to wait for the next season. It debuts next week on November 26th on podcasts everywhere. From San Francisco, this is Chase Patrick with a reminder. Stay tuned. You'll never unhear what happens next.